Ruby Mae Thompson adjusted the strap of her worn canvas purse as she approached the gleaming gates of Peterson Air Force Base. The Colorado morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac, where sleek fighter jets lined up like steel predators, waiting to hunt. At 72, her steps were measured but determined, her silver-white hair pulled back in a neat ponytail that caught the early light. The Peterson Air Force Base Air Show was the most prestigious military aviation event of the year. VIP tickets cost $800 each, and Ruby had saved for 8 months to afford the platinum package at $2,000. She'd eaten nothing but rice and beans for weeks, but this was important to her in ways she couldn't explain to anyone. The VIP section gleamed with black leather chairs, complimentary cocktails, and a perfect view of the runway. This was where Colorado's elite gathered: CEOs, politicians, and wealthy business people who came to witness the renowned military aviation demonstrations. While networking over champagne and caviar, Ruby wore a faded blue sweater from Walmart, worn khaki pants, and white sneakers that had turned yellow with age. Around her neck hung a simple silver chain with a small eagle wing pendant that caught the light when she moved. Her blue eyes held a deep, knowing gaze that seemed both gentle and observant, scanning her surroundings as if she were waiting for something specific to happen. Preston Blackwood, 38, CEO of Blackwood Industries Aerospace Technology Company, stood near the champagne table in his charcoal Armani suit. At 6'5", with slicked back hair and a Rolex that cost more than most people's cars, he embodied the arrogance that comes with generational wealth. He had inherited his family's fortune and wore it like armor against the world. Beside him stood Vanessa Sterling, 42, wife of Colorado Senator Richard Sterling. A former model, she wore a red Chanel dress, carried a Hermes bag, and dripped with diamond jewelry. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and flawless makeup spoke to a life lived entirely in the public eye, where image meant everything and substance was optional. Ruby quietly found a seat in the back row of the VIP section, trying to avoid attention. But Preston had spotted her the moment she entered, and his sense of superiority demanded action. Something about her presence offended his carefully ordered world where everyone knew their place and stayed in it. "Hey, look at this." Preston pointed directly at Ruby, his voice loud enough to make the entire VIP section turn around. "Did this old lady get lost from the trailer park? Look at those clothes. She must have shopped at a thrift store." His laughter was cruel and deliberate, designed to humiliate rather than amuse. The sound cut through the polite conversation like a knife, drawing uncomfortable glances from other guests who weren't sure whether to join in or look away. Vanessa quickly joined in, pulling out her phone to snap photos of Ruby. "Oh my God, she probably thinks this is a flea market. I have to post this story online. This is absolutely ridiculous. How did she even get in here?" The crowd began to take notice, with many people chuckling under their breath. Other VIP guests started whispering among themselves. "How did she get in here? That ticket must be fake. Where's security? Get her out of here." The cruel commentary spread like wildfire through the exclusive section, creating a mob mentality that fed on Ruby's apparent vulnerability. Each comment grew bolder, each laugh more pointed, as the privileged guests found entertainment in someone they perceived as beneath them. Ruby sat quietly, a very faint furrow crossing her brow for just a moment, as if an old memory had passed by like a shadow. But immediately, the calm returned. Her blue eyes focused straight ahead on the runway where fighter jets were preparing for their demonstrations. In that silence, Ruby listened to the harsh words with a strangely familiar feeling, like wind whistling through a cockpit at 30,000 feet. She whispered softly, her voice barely audible above the commotion. "I'll wait long enough to see the clouds form into an eagle's wing." From his observation post, Colonel Bill Hayes was watching through binoculars. He noticed Ruby and the small, eagle wing pendant around her neck, his expression becoming intensely focused, as if trying to remember something critically important from long ago. The sound of an F-16 taking off filled the air, preparing for the first demonstration of the day. Ruby looked up at the sky, a dreamy smile appearing on her lips as memories from long ago seemed to dance in her eyes. But Preston didn't know that. The clouds above were beginning to gather into the shape of an eagle's wing, and Ruby was counting every second until something miraculous would happen. The F-16 demonstration began with the deafening roar of engines that shook the entire airshow. The pilot maneuvered the sleek fighter jet through complex aerial maneuvers at low altitude, designed to showcase American military might to the thousands of spectators below. This was the most anticipated performance of the day, a carefully choreographed display of precision flying that never failed to leave audiences in awe. The jet screamed overhead at incredible speeds, pulling G-forces that would crush an ordinary person, while the crowd cheered and applauded each death-defying maneuver. But Ruby observed the F-16 with eyes that truly understood what she was watching. While everyone else was simply amazed by the spectacle, she noticed something that troubled her deeply. A brief flashback flickered through her mind. Ruby, at 25 years old, wearing a flight uniform, her hands gripping the controls of an aircraft, threading through enemy fire. Her teammate's voice echoing through the radio. "Ruby, maintain altitude. If it wasn't for you, we would have been shot down long ago." In that moment, she remembered every gust of wind, every shudder of the cockpit, and the spine-chilling cold. When she knew the lives of 30 soldiers lay in her hands, the memory lasted only seconds, but it reminded her of the weight of responsibility that came with every flight, every decision, every moment in the cockpit where lives hung in the balance. The F-16 was flying a dangerous pattern, too low, at a 30-degree banking angle, while strong crosswinds blew from the northwest. Ruby stood up suddenly, causing everyone around her to stare in surprise and confusion. "She needs to climb 500 feet higher and turn right," Ruby said with a calm but decisive voice that cut through the noise of the crowd. "The crosswinds are blowing hard from the northwest." Her tone carried the unmistakable authority of someone who had faced similar situations countless times before. But to the VIP guests, it was just an old woman making ridiculous comments about things she couldn't possibly understand. Preston burst into cruel laughter that echoed across the VIP section. "This old lady is actually criticizing a professional pilot. Have you ever even seen an airplane before, except for commercial flights to visit your grandchildren?" Vanessa added fuel to the fire with her own vicious commentary. She probably watched Top Gun on her trailer park TV and thinks she's an expert. This is absolutely hilarious. The crowd erupted in laughter, with many people recording videos of Ruby being mocked to share on social media. The hashtag #TrailerParkPilot began trending on various platforms as the humiliation spread beyond the airshow itself. Ruby continued watching the F-16, completely ignoring the cruel comments swirling around her like verbal daggers. She added, with quiet confidence, "The pilot needs to reduce speed and adjust the controls to compensate for the crosswind. If not, there will be an accident." "Enough." Preston stood up, his face flushed red with anger and embarrassment that this old woman dared to contradict his worldview. "You're polluting our VIP space with your ignorant comments. Where is security?" His voice cracked with the strain of maintaining his superiority in the face of Ruby's unshakable composure. The crowd's laughter grew louder and more vicious, feeding off Preston's encouragement and Vanessa's social media documentation of the incident. 2 security guards appeared, walking directly toward Ruby with stern expressions. The larger guard, a serious-looking man with military bearing, approached her with professional authority. "Ma'am, please present your ticket and identification," he said firmly, his hand already extended expectantly. Ruby calmly opened her worn canvas bag and pulled out a VIP Platinum ticket worth $2,000, the most expensive option available at the airshow. The security guard took it for examination, his expression changing dramatically when he realized the ticket was genuine. Preston's face turned red with indignation. "That's impossible. That ticket has to be fake, or she stole it from somewhere." The second security guard snatched the ticket from Ruby's hands, declaring loudly, "We'll verify this immediately. If this is a counterfeit ticket, you'll be arrested for fraud." The crowd gathered closer to watch Ruby's humiliation unfold like a public execution. Everyone was laughing, taking photos, and recording videos. Vanessa began live streaming on social media, watching them catch a scammer at the airshow, right? Now! Ruby remained seated calmly, a fleeting, absent look passing through her blue eyes for a moment, as if the mocking words had inadvertently touched an old scar in her soul. But then she refocused on the sky above. Then something extraordinary happened that changed everything in an instant. The F-16 suddenly encountered severe turbulence, exactly as Ruby had predicted. The enthusiastic demonstration suddenly fell. Silent. Thousands of people held their breath, their horrified eyes focused on the F-16 that was wobbling unstably. Preston's red, arrogant face immediately turned pale, his earlier arrogance transforming into extreme terror clearly visible in his wide-open eyes. The pilot's voice crackled over the radio for everyone to hear. "Ground control. I'm having difficulty maintaining control. The crosswinds are stronger than forecasted." The entire airshow fell silent as thousands of people watched the fighter jet wobble unstably in the sky, clearly in distress. The mood shifted from entertainment to genuine concern as the reality of the danger became apparent to everyone watching. Ruby stood straight and spoke loudly and clearly, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. "The pilot needs to reduce speed immediately, climb 500 feet, and adjust the controls to the right to compensate for the crosswind." Like a miracle, the F-16 began following Ruby's instructions and gradually stabilized. The aircraft successfully completed the difficult maneuver and landed safely, bringing relief to thousands of worried spectators who had just witnessed a near disaster. The crowd fell completely silent. Preston and Vanessa stood frozen, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. How could an elderly woman know something that even aviation experts hadn't recognized? From his observation post, Colonel Hayes was watching through binoculars, his eyes widening as he heard Ruby's voice and recognized something familiar from decades past. He signaled to his aide, "Record everything she says. I need to verify something. Important." A nearby veteran in a wheelchair, Jake Morrison, looked at Ruby with amazement in his eyes. He noticed the eagle wing pendant around her neck, his expression brightening as if recognizing something significant from his own military past. Ruby sat back down, returning to her quiet demeanor as if nothing extraordinary had happened. She simply looked up at the sky and whispered, "They fly as beautifully as they did back then." Colonel Hayes left his observation post and walked quickly toward the VIP section, driven by a growing suspicion that demanded immediate verification. Jake Morrison also maneuvered his wheelchair toward Ruby, his face filled with emotion and recognition. Preston, sensing that the situation was turning against him, quickly pulled out his phone and began creating a counter-narrative to protect his reputation and maintain his position of supposed superiority. Colonel Hayes approached within 3 steps of Ruby and suddenly stopped. He stared intently at the eagle wing pendant, then into Ruby's blue eyes, his military training warring with disbelief. A tear rolled down his weathered, sun-darkened cheek. His hand trembled as he slowly raised it in a crisp military salute, executed with the precision that only comes from years of service and deep respect. The entire VIP section was stunned into silence. Why would a high-ranking officer salute an elderly woman in discount clothing? The incongruity of the moment created a cognitive dissonance that left everyone struggling to understand what they were witnessing. "Why is he saluting her?" someone whispered urgently. "Did he mistake her for someone else? What's happening here?" The questions rippled through the crowd as people tried to make sense of the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. Preston saw his opportunity slipping away and quickly opened his social media account to post. "Urgent warning. There is currently a scammer at Peterson Air Force Base, impersonating military personnel. An elderly woman is trying to deceive people by pretending to understand aircraft. This could be a terrorist plot or espionage. Everyone be careful and report to security immediately." His fingers flew across the keyboard as he desperately tried to control the narrative before it spiraled completely out of his control. Vanessa immediately shared Preston's post with her own caption. "I spotted this from the beginning. Don't be fooled by these criminals trying to infiltrate our secure spaces." Their social media posts began gaining traction as their followers shared the supposed warning, creating a digital mob that matched the physical one at the air show. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison had wheeled closer to Ruby, struggling to stand on his prosthetic leg, his voice trembling with emotion. Ruby Anderson? Dear God, it can't be." His words carried the weight of recognition that transcended the decades since he had last seen her face. A middle-aged man in the crowd suddenly stood up, his voice cutting through the confused murmur. "She saved my uncle on the battlefield in 1972. I recognized the pendant. My uncle told me about the brave woman who brought the entire squadron home safely." His testimony created a ripple effect through the VIP section like an awakening wave. The earlier whispers of contempt suddenly transformed into gasps of amazement and urgent questions. Who is she really? Is this true? The doubt about the initial mockery spread quickly, replaced by burning curiosity about Ruby's true identity as people began to reconsider their assumptions and the cruel judgments they had made. Colonel Hayes stepped closer to Ruby, his voice choked with emotion. "Colonel Thompson, after 30 years." The title hung in the air like a revelation, causing audible gasps from those close enough to hear. Ruby looked up at him with a gentle smile that carried both warmth and humility. "I just came to watch the young ones fly, Bill. No need to make a big deal out of it." Her casual use of his first name confirmed their long-standing relationship and added another layer of authenticity to the unfolding revelation. Preston and Vanessa stood paralyzed with shock. Colonel Thompson? This elderly woman was actually a military officer. The possibility seemed impossible to reconcile with their preconceptions and prejudices. Jake Morrison grasped Ruby's hand, tears streaming down his face. "You saved my life and 25 others during Operation Thunder Valley. I'll never forget the day you piloted that B-2 through enemy fire to bring us home safely." His testimony carried the weight of lived experience and genuine gratitude that couldn't be faked or manufactured. Preston's social media post was gaining hundreds of shares and comments. But now some people were beginning to comment in opposition. "Hey, Preston, it looks like you might be wrong about this. She seems to be a real military person. You should delete this post." The digital tide was beginning to turn as more information emerged, threatening to expose Preston's hasty judgment and cruel behavior. Preston panicked and tried to defend his position. "No, this is a group scam. They're putting on an act." His desperation was becoming increasingly obvious to everyone watching, both in person and online. But the roar from the sky announced that something massive was approaching, and what Preston never expected was about to turn him into a national laughingstock. This was the pinnacle moment of the entire air show, the B-2 bomber demonstration. featuring the world's most expensive stealth aircraft worth $2.1 billion. Only a few times each year did civilians get to witness this monster in flight, making it a truly historic moment for everyone in attendance. The anticipation was palpable as thousands of people craned their necks toward the horizon, cameras ready to capture the rare sight of America's most advanced strategic bomber in action. The morning had built to this crescendo, where cutting-edge technology would dance across the Colorado sky like a steel symphony of American military might. From the horizon, the roar of the B-2 bomber echoed like thunder across the landscape, growing louder with each passing second until it seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. The triangular-shaped aircraft appeared mysterious and otherworldly as it flew at its planned altitude of 2,000 feet, its stealth technology making it seem to materialize from thin air like a ghost made manifest. The massive bomber's presence commanded absolute attention. Its dark silhouette cut through the blue sky with an authority that spoke to decades of engineering excellence and strategic deterrence. Preston was still desperately trying to salvage the situation, his voice growing more frantic with each word as sweat began to bead on his forehead. "This is all fake. I'm the CEO of an aerospace company. I know this industry inside and out. There's no way an old woman like that could be a pilot." His professional credentials were his last line of defense against the mounting evidence that contradicted his worldview and threatened to expose his fundamental ignorance. Vanessa supported him with equal desperation in her voice, her earlier composure completely shattered. "Exactly. Look at her. She looks like a homeless person. How could she possibly be military personnel?" Their words rang hollow against the growing testimony from veterans and military personnel who were beginning to recognize Ruby's significance. The couple's panic was becoming increasingly obvious to everyone around them, their voices growing shriller as their carefully constructed social standing began to crumble before their eyes. But then something absolutely unbelievable happened that would change everything forever and render their protests meaningless. The B-2 bomber suddenly changed its flight path, descending from 2,000 feet to 500 feet, completely violating safety regulations and the planned demonstration route. The entire airshow seemed to hold its breath as thousands of people simultaneously stood up, not understanding what was happening. The massive aircraft's deviation from protocol sent alarm rippling through the crowd like an electric current, with many people wondering if they were witnessing an emergency or something even more extraordinary. A heavy silence enveloped the space, so profound that one could hear their own heartbeat, before the pilot's voice rang out over the public address system. The anticipation was suffocating, creating a moment where time itself seemed suspended between confusion and revelation. The pilot's voice boomed over the airshow's public address system, clearly audible to all 5,000 people in attendance. "Ground control. This is Spirit 21. I request permission to change the mission today. Priority belongs to the person who once opened the sky for our entire generation to fly." The announcement sent shock waves through the crowd as people tried to understand the significance of the pilot's words and what they meant for the woman everyone had been mocking just minutes before. The gravity of the moment settled over the crowd, like a blanket of understanding as the implications of the pilot's tribute began to sink into thousands of minds simultaneously. The B-2 bomber then performed a slow, dignified barrel roll, an honor salute reserved exclusively for fallen heroes or living legends. The massive aircraft moved with surprising grace as it executed the tribute, its enormous wingspan cutting through the air with the precision of a conductor's baton, leading an orchestra of honor. The maneuver created a moment of profound respect that silenced the entire airshow, transforming what had been a routine demonstration into a sacred ceremony witnessed by thousands. 5,000 people simultaneously looked up at the B-2 bomber performing its aerial ceremony, understanding instinctively that they were witnessing something far more significant than a routine demonstration, something that would be remembered and retold for generations to come. Then something even more miraculous occurred that seemed to defy all explanation. The people in the VIP section, as if guided by an invisible force or collective conscience, simultaneously turned toward Ruby and automatically stepped aside, creating a straight pathway like an unspoken honor guard. The spontaneous formation happened without planning or direction, driven by a collective recognition that they were in the presence of someone truly exceptional, someone whose service had earned this moment of recognition. Veterans present at the air show began standing at attention and saluting with military precision, while ordinary civilians instinctively bowed their heads in respect, creating a living tableau of honor that stretched across the entire venue. Preston and Vanessa stood frozen in the middle of the crowd, their faces pale with the realization of their massive mistake. The magnitude of their error was becoming clear as the evidence mounted around them, impossible to deny or dismiss, like walls of truth closing in from every direction. The airshow's cameras began zooming in on Ruby, projecting her image onto giant LED screens so everyone could see the small eagle wing pendant around her neck and the quiet dignity etched into every line of her weathered face. The close-up revealed the strength and quiet grace that contradicted every assumption that had been made about her, showing the crowd the true face of heroism. Jake Morrison spoke into a microphone, his voice thick with emotion and carrying across the air show like a benediction. This is Colonel Ruby Mae Thompson, the first woman to pilot a B-2 in actual combat. His words carried across the air show, finally giving a name and context to the woman who had been dismissed and ridiculed. The revelation sent waves of understanding through the crowd as people began to comprehend the true significance of what they were witnessing, not just an air show, but a moment of historical recognition. Ruby stood up, but instead of walking toward the stage of honor where she belonged, she stepped toward Preston and Vanessa with the same quiet confidence she had shown throughout the ordeal. The two trembled with fear and uncertainty, not knowing what Ruby intended to do or say. Their earlier arrogance had completely evaporated. But Ruby simply stood before them, looking straight into their eyes with a calm voice that carried the authority of someone who had faced far greater challenges. "Do you know why I flew?" Preston and Vanessa couldn't bring themselves to answer, overwhelmed by shame and the weight of their actions. Ruby continued with gentle authority that somehow made her words even more powerful. "To protect everyone's freedom, including your freedom to make mistakes." And that was when the complete truth was revealed under the Colorado sun. What Preston was about to face would haunt him forever, but also teach him the most valuable lesson of his life. After the B-2 bomber's salute, the entire airshow transformed into a spontaneous ceremony of honor that seemed to emerge from the collective soul of America itself. Colonel Hayes ordered the Peterson Air Force Base Band to appear, creating an official military ceremony in the middle of civilian life. The transformation was remarkable as the casual airshow atmosphere gave way to the solemn dignity of military protocol, with thousands of civilians witnessing a tribute typically reserved for the most hallowed military occasions. The very air seemed to thicken with reverence as the moment took on a gravity that transcended entertainment and entered the realm of national remembrance. From seemingly nowhere, the Peterson Air Force Base Band appeared, 20 members marching in perfect formation, their polished instruments gleaming in the Colorado sun as they drummed the solemn ceremonial march. The synchronized drum beats echoed across the air show like a heartbeat of honor, compelling everyone to stand at attention out of instinctive respect. The sound created a reverent atmosphere that transformed the entertainment venue into a sacred space of remembrance and recognition, where the ordinary boundaries between civilian and military, past and present, seemed to dissolve. Colonel Hayes carried a red velvet box containing a commemorative medal, walking toward Ruby in front of 5,000 people before kneeling on one knee, with the grace and precision that only comes from a lifetime of military service, placing the medal around her neck with trembling hands. On behalf of the United States Air Force, I honor Colonel Ruby Mae Thompson, the first woman to pilot strategic bombing aircraft in actual combat, with 89 successful combat missions, he announced, his voice carrying across the silent air show through the public address system with the weight of official recognition. The entire crowd applauded continuously for 5 minutes while many veterans openly wept, overwhelmed by the recognition of someone who had paved the way for their own service and sacrificed so much for their freedom. The sustained applause created a powerful moment of national unity and shared respect that transcended political and social divisions, uniting thousands of strangers in recognition of true heroism. The worst part for Preston and Vanessa was just beginning to unfold like a nightmare they couldn't escape. The airshow's cameras accidentally began replaying on the 50-inch LED screens the moments when they had mocked Ruby from the beginning, creating a devastating montage of their cruelty. Preston pointing at Ruby, saying, "This trailer park lady." Vanessa taking photos and posting online with cruel hashtags designed to humiliate. The footage of them calling security and demanding Ruby's removal with the arrogance of people who believed their wealth gave them the right to judge others. Preston's frantic social media post claiming Ruby was a scammer, possibly a terrorist. The replay created a devastating highlight reel of their ignorance and cruelty, broadcast to thousands of people and countless more watching online streams. The entire crowd of 5,000 people witnessed their behavior through the massive screens, and the reaction was immediate, intense, and unforgiving. Voices began shouting with righteous indignation. They got what they deserved. Shameful beyond belief. Who are these terrible people? Absolutely disgusting. The boos, whistles, and curses echoed continuously across the venue. The public shaming was comprehensive and inescapable, with their faces now associated with ignorance and cruelty on a national scale that would follow them for years to come. Even worse, the live streams and videos had been shared thousands of times on social media platforms, with their cruelty toward a war hero becoming viral content that would remain in the digital record forever. They tried to hide in the crowd, but everyone recognized them from the screen replays, pointing and staring as if they were exhibits in a museum of shame. Countless cell phones immediately rose up, recording and live streaming. Here they are, the two people who mocked the war hero, their faces flushed red with embarrassment, sweat pouring out like a shower, and their desperate eyes pleading with the crowd to stop. Their attempts to escape only made their situation worse, as more people documented their disgrace and shared it widely, creating an ever-expanding circle of exposure and humiliation. The contrast between their earlier arrogance and current humiliation was stark and complete, serving as a powerful lesson about the consequences of judging others superficially and the dangers of unchecked privilege. Preston's social media post was gaining thousands of shares and comments. But now that the truth was revealed, those posts became evidence of his poor judgment and quick rush to condemn someone he knew nothing about. The digital record of his accusations against Ruby would remain online permanently, a testament to the dangers of prejudice and hasty judgment that would serve as a cautionary tale for others. Vanessa watched her social media following plummet from 50,000 to 30,000 followers in just 1 hour as people fled from association with her documented cruelty, her carefully curated online persona crumbling as quickly as it had been built. The B-2 bomber pilot had landed and ran to Ruby, removing his helmet to reveal a young face filled with respect and admiration, kneeling on one knee. "Mom, it's an honor to serve under the legacy you left for all of us." His gesture of respect was captured by dozens of cameras and added to the growing documentation of Ruby's significance. Jake Morrison spoke from his wheelchair, his voice breaking with emotion and carrying the weight of shared sacrifice. Ruby saved my life and 25 others during Operation Thunder Valley in 1972. She piloted a B-2 through enemy fire to bring us home safely when no one else would take the risk. His testimony provided concrete details about Ruby's heroism, giving substance to the honors being bestowed upon her and helping the crowd understand the true magnitude of her service. Ruby maintained her humble demeanor throughout the ceremony, gently bowing her head and whispering into the microphone with characteristic modesty, "I didn't do it to be saluted. I did it because it was my duty and my honor to serve." Her words carried the simple dignity of someone who had never sought recognition but had earned it through extraordinary service and sacrifice. The camera zoomed in on Preston and Vanessa's faces, pale, sweating profusely, and overwhelmed with the magnitude of their mistake. Their expressions of shock and horror were broadcast live, creating lasting images that would define them in the public consciousness and serve as a permanent reminder of the consequences of their actions. Reporters from major news networks rushed toward Ruby with microphones and cameras extended like weapons, their voices urgent and hungry for conflict. "Carl Thompson, what do you want to say to the people who mocked you? Do you plan to sue them for defamation? Will you press charges for harassment?" The media sensed a story of conflict and confrontation, expecting Ruby to provide quotable condemnation of her tormentors that would feed the public's appetite for drama and revenge. The cameras focused intently on Ruby's face, waiting for the anger and indignation that everyone expected and perhaps deserved. But Ruby didn't answer the reporters' questions. Instead, she chose to scan the crowd with her steady blue eyes until she found Preston and Vanessa trying desperately to hide behind other people, their earlier arrogance replaced by pure terror. Her decision to ignore the media circus and seek out her accusers surprised everyone watching, creating a tension that was almost unbearable. Ruby walked straight down from the grandstand, moving through the crowd with the same quiet confidence she had shown throughout the ordeal. Every step was watched by thousands of people with intense curiosity about her intentions, creating a silence so complete that her footsteps seemed to echo across the entire venue. "What is she going to do?" someone whispered urgently. "She's probably going to really give them a piece of her mind," another person replied. "They deserve to be publicly humiliated for what they did." The crowd's expectations were for dramatic confrontation and righteous anger, the kind of justice that would satisfy their desire to see wrongdoers punished, making Ruby's actual response all the more powerful and unexpected when it finally came. Ruby stood directly in front of Preston and Vanessa, who were trembling with fear and unable to look directly into her eyes, their bodies shaking as if they were facing a firing squad rather than a 72-year-old woman. Vanessa was even crying uncontrollably, from fear and shame, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams, overwhelmed by the magnitude of their public humiliation and the weight of their actions. The crowd pressed closer, expecting fireworks, expecting shouting, expecting the kind of dramatic confrontation that would satisfy their sense of justice. But Ruby simply extended her weathered hand and shook Preston's trembling hand in front of 5,000 people and millions more watching through live streams and social media coverage. The gesture was simple but profound, cutting through the tension and expectation with an act of grace that few could have anticipated and fewer still could have executed. "I forgive you," Ruby said, her voice gentle but clear enough for the microphones to capture every syllable. "Oh, you didn't know, and that's not your fault." Her words carried the weight of genuine forgiveness rather than mere politeness or social convention, spoken with the authority of someone who had faced real enemies and chosen mercy over vengeance. Preston began to cry uncontrollably, his entire body shaking with sobs, unable to believe the grace he was receiving when he expected and perhaps deserved condemnation. The tears came from somewhere deep within him, a place that had been locked away behind years of privilege and arrogance. Ruby continued with gentle authority that somehow made her forgiveness even more powerful. Next time, don't judge anyone. Ask them where they've flown in their lives. Instead of demands for revenge or calls for justice, the crowd began applauding with an intensity that surprised even themselves. Not for victory or vindication, but for the nobility and grace they had just witnessed from someone who had every right to be angry, every justification for revenge, every reason to make her tormentors suffer as they had made her suffer. Many people in the crowd began crying, not from emotion alone, but because they recognized their own similar prejudices reflected in Preston and Vanessa's behavior, and the grace that Ruby was extending to all of them through her forgiveness. The applause grew stronger as people understood they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that transcended the usual patterns of conflict and retribution. A middle-aged man stepped forward, his voice breaking. "I apologize for laughing along with them. I didn't know, but that's no excuse." A woman nearby added with tears in her eyes, "I also shared videos mocking you. I'll delete them immediately and make a public apology." Preston knelt down in front of Ruby, tears streaming down his face in a display of genuine remorse that shocked everyone who knew his reputation for arrogance. "Ma'am, I was completely wrong. I was totally wrong about everything. I apologize from the bottom of my heart for my ignorance, my cruelty, and my complete failure as a human being." His public display of remorse was genuine and complete, representing a total reversal from his earlier arrogance and cruelty, a transformation that seemed to happen in real time before the eyes of thousands. Vanessa also cried uncontrollably, her designer makeup completely ruined, her carefully crafted image destroyed. "We don't deserve your forgiveness. We were terrible people who said terrible things. We have no excuse for our behavior." Ruby helped Preston stand up, her actions demonstrating that forgiveness includes restoration and dignity rather than continued humiliation. "You had the courage to admit your mistake publicly. That's the most valuable thing of all, and it's the first step toward becoming the person you're meant to be." A response emphasized growth and learning rather than punishment and shame, showing a wisdom that came from decades of service and sacrifice. Jake Morrison wheeled closer, grasping Ruby's hand with both of his. "This is exactly why you deserve every medal they could ever give you. Not because you're good at flying or fighting, but because you have the biggest heart and the strongest character I've ever known." His words captured the essence of Ruby's heroism and why her military service was just one aspect of her true greatness. Colonel Hayes stood at attention and saluted with tears in his eyes. "This is a leadership lesson I'll teach every officer under my command for the rest of my career. True strength isn't about power. It's about grace under pressure." The military recognition extended beyond her combat service to her character and moral leadership, acknowledging that her greatest victory had nothing to do with warfare. The B-2 bomber pilot added with genuine admiration, "You've shown me the true meaning of serving our country. It's not just about defending freedom. It's about demonstrating the values that make freedom worth defending." The video of Ruby's act of forgiveness began going viral within minutes, spreading across social media platforms with positive hashtags celebrating grace and redemption rather than conflict and division. People who had initially shared videos mocking Ruby now shared videos about the power of forgiveness and second chances, creating a wave of positive content that drowned out the earlier negativity. Preston deleted his accusatory social media post and wrote a lengthy public apology. "I learned the biggest lesson of my life today about not judging people by their appearance." Colonel Ruby Thompson taught me the true meaning of grace and forgiveness. I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the mercy she showed me." His public acknowledgement represented genuine transformation rather than mere damage control. And from that moment, a new legacy began to be written. Not just about a war hero, but about the power of forgiveness to change the entire world. One heart at a time. 6 months after the air show, the ripple effects of Ruby's story had spread far beyond anyone's imagination, creating lasting change in countless lives across the nation. The power of her example had transcended the initial incident to become a catalyst for broader social reflection and positive action. Ruby sat on a plastic chair in front of her small trailer at Pine Valley Mobile Home Park in Colorado Springs, watching the evening sky as aircraft from Peterson Air Force Base flew overhead. On the table beside her sat a stack of thank you letters from around the world, drawings of airplanes from children, letters from veterans thanking her for inspiration, and notes from women saying her story had given them courage to pursue their dreams. She opened a letter from an 8-year-old girl in Ohio. "Dear Miss Ruby, I want to become a pilot like you. My dad said I couldn't because I'm a girl, but I showed him the video about you. Now Dad says I can do anything I want." The afternoon sun reflected off the eagle wing pendant, creating small dancing lights across Ruby's face as she smiled. "They fly as beautifully as they used to," she whispered. An F-16 flew overhead, and the pilot performed a small salute. A wing dip specifically for Ruby. This had become a daily tradition. Every time pilots flew over this area, they saluted her as a ritual of respect. Each acknowledgement served as a reminder that her legacy lived on in the daily service of a new generation of aviators who carried her example with them into the skies. In his Denver mansion, Preston sat in his 8-year-old son Michael's study, room surrounded by photos and mementos that told a very different story than the one from 6 months earlier. On the wall hung a beautifully framed photo of Ruby, taken at the moment she shook Preston's hand at the air show. "Son, I want to tell you about Miss Ruby," Preston said, his voice sincere and humble. "Dad made the biggest mistake of his life when I judged her without knowing her story." Michael, a boy with large round eyes like his father's, asked innocently, "Why did you laugh at her, Daddy?" Preston sighed deeply before answering, "Because I hadn't learned to look with my heart instead of just my eyes. I only saw the outside and missed meeting a real hero." He listened intently as Preston told Ruby's story, about her forgiveness and about the lessons Preston had learned. "Daddy, are you still rich?" Michael asked with childlike curiosity. "What does being rich mean?" "Son," Preston smiled gently, "having lots of money." "Well, I still have money, but now I know how to use it better." Preston pointed to a certificate on the wall. "Look here, son. I started the Ruby Thompson Foundation, a scholarship fund for veterans' children who want to learn to fly. I've raised $5 million in 6 months. Is Miss Ruby happy?" the boy asked. "She said the thing that makes her happiest is seeing children like you have dreams of flying high." Preston's transformation was complete and genuine, representing a fundamental change in his values and priorities, rather than mere public relations. At the Ruby Thompson Flight Training Center in Colorado Springs, 10-year-old Emma Martinez took her first steps into a flight simulator. On the wall hung a gleaming bronze plaque, Ruby Mae Thompson Flight Training Center, dedicated to the first woman to carry eagle wings into the sky of freedom. Emma read each word aloud, her eyes bright with excitement. "Mommy, I want to carry eagle wings too." A mother, Maria Martinez, a Latina woman who worked in a factory, had tears in her eyes. "You can do it, honey. I believe in you." Colonel Hayes, now the center's director, emerged from his office, carrying a small eagle wing pendant, a miniature version of the one Ruby wore. "This is a gift from Colonel Ruby," he said, placing it around Emma's neck. "She wants all girls." To know that the sky has no limits. Anna put on the pendant, her eyes sparkling. I'm going to fly as high as Miss Ruby. The ceremony represented the continuation of Ruby's legacy through a new generation of dreamers and achievers. Over the past 6 months, Ruby's story had inspired 50,000 women to enroll in pilot training courses, led to the creation of 15 Ruby-named aviation training centers nationwide, changed Air Force recruitment policies to prioritize gender equality, and become a case study about forgiveness in universities across the country. Preston had become an advocate for veterans. Vanessa had left her superficial social media life to become a full-time volunteer at Veterans Care Centers, finding purpose in service rather than self-promotion. The final scene showed Ruby standing at Peterson Airport, invited to attend the graduation ceremony of the first class from the Ruby Thompson Flight Training Center. 50 young female pilots had just completed their training, representing the direct result of her inspiration and example. As they marched past Ruby, each one lightly touched the eagle wing pendant around her neck, a new tradition for good luck that honored her legacy while creating hope for the future. Ruby looked up at the sky where a formation of aircraft flew overhead, creating the words, "Thank you," in white smoke against the blue Colorado sky. Ruby's own voice provided the final narration. I didn't fly to be praised. I flew to open the path for those who came after me. And now there are 50 new pairs of wings ready to fly higher than I ever flew. The final frame showed the smoke, trails from the aircraft forming into a giant eagle-winged shape across the blue Colorado sky, symbolizing the soaring spirit that Ruby had embodied and passed on to countless others. Ruby had proven that real heroes don't need capes or glory. They just need a big heart and the grace to forgive. As the sun set over Colorado Springs, Ruby whispered one final time, never judge anyone by their appearance. Ask them where they've flown in their lives. The eagle wing pendant caught the last rays of sunlight, casting a golden glow that seemed to promise that her legacy would continue soaring for generations to come. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.